I saw the video message at 9:32 a.m., a 30-second clip that rewrote the last year of my life. One shot of me walking through a front door, one shot of me leaving. That's all it took for my son to be taken, my wife to block me, and everyone I loved to believe I'd betrayed them again. This is the story of how one person's perfect, patient revenge left me with nothing but a screen recording and no way to prove my innocence. If you're here for raw, messy human stories, the ones that make you wince and then can't stop thinking about hit like and subscribe, stay till the end. I'll tell you what I learned when everything I'd ever had was taken away in the most ruthless way imaginable. When I close my eyes, I can still feel the grit under my fingernails from the last time I tried to fix something that was already broken. Not physical grit, emotional. The kind that sticks to you after you make a terrible, selfish decision and spend months trying to sand it away. I was 40-something. I'd been with Annie for 8 years. She was steady, the kind of person who left clean mugs and mature messages and plans on the fridge. We built small things together. Weekend routines, inside jokes, the way she'd throw back her head laughing at something only I'd said badly. We weren't flashy. We were safe, comfortable. Boring, some people would say. But that's not a fault when you've been together so long. It's a life. And then I did something that tore a clean edge into that life. I cheated. It wasn't an act of passion so much as a stupid sequence of choices. Late nights at work, a colleague, Jess, who listened when I needed someone to. A conversation that slid into something more. I'm not offering excuses. There aren't any. I knew it was wrong as soon as it started. The guilt was immediate and volcanic. I didn't hide from it. I ran into it, and I did things that made the guilt worse. I lost my job. I lost half my friends. I thought I'd lost Annie, but that part was complicated. The pain I caused her is on me. I deserve the fury, the silence, all of it. I never asked for sympathy for that part. I only wanted one fragile, human thing afterward. A chance to make a right, or at least say sorry well. Months after that breakup, after my stuff was left at my parents' house, and after Annie disappeared from our shared life with a final, loaded silence, I saw her. It was in a shop. I froze like an animal that sees a shadow it once trusted. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She looked at me like I was a fact she no longer wanted to discuss. She told me she'd found a keychain my granddad gave me when I was a kid. She knew it mattered to me. It was trivial, cheap, worth nothing to anyone but me. She told me I could pick it up the following Saturday morning, or she'd throw it away. Her tone implied a deadline and a verdict. I could have let it go. I could have stayed away. But the little things are treacherous. They carry the heft of memory. Clemency can be made of coin-size objects. I agreed. I thought it would be quick. Exchange of an object. Closure. Here's the part where everything spirals in a single day. Jess was pregnant with my son. We were, at least I thought we were, building something new on the ruins of my stupidity. She and I had our issues, sure. She had seen the messages I'd sent to Annie months before, and it had caused fights. But pregnant people and new families are incredibly determined creatures. We moved past that initial turbulence and started planning differently. We both wanted the baby. I was committed. I had cut every other line. No more mistakes. No more wandering. The baby was late. A nerve-wracking electric wait. I remember pacing our apartment at 2 a.m., counting the clock hands like prayer beads. Then he came. Healthy, loud, the most paradoxical bundle of hope and accusation I've ever held. 24 hours later, on the Saturday I'd agreed to collect the keychain, I left the hospital for what I thought would be a 5-minute trip. I told myself it would be quick. Everyone would understand. When I walked into Annie's house at 9:30 a.m., the air there smelled unchanged. Tea and something that could only be called home. That smell stung. She invited me in, not with warmth of someone forgiving, but with the settled, brittle politeness of someone who has rehearsed a boundary and then closed it. We talked. It was careful. It felt like the sort of conversation where two people touch the edges of closure. I let her know I was sorry. I said the things people say when they mean to heal. I understand. I'm sorry. I don't expect anything. She replied the way someone does when they have peace you don't. She wished me well, hugged me, and told me she hoped I'd be happy with my new family. It wasn't like the last hug I imagined, but I admit I clung to it. I held on so tightly for the relief that slid into my veins, because closure has its own kind of oxygen. I was there less than an hour. The clock said 10:15 when I left. The keychain was in my pocket. I put it away and headed straight to the hospital. I didn't text Jess. I didn't tell Jess. I decided not to bring the earthquake of Annie's presence into a fragile situation. When I arrived back at the hospital, things were normal at first. Then they weren't. Jess had revoked my access. The ward manager's face told me this was not a simple mistake. The word revoked has a medieval sound to it. It implies decree, judgment, closure. The security guard's hand on my elbow felt like the final page of a book being slammed shut. I didn't get a meeting. I didn't get an explanation. I got a screen recording from Annie. It was doorbell camera footage, 9:30 into the house, 10:15 out. Those timestamps, a 30-second video. The hug captured partially could be framed as ambiguous. And then there was the text. Did he even shower and change his clothes between fucking me and holding his son? Congratulations on being stuck with him for the next 18 years. I hope it's everything you dreamed of. That message did the job revenge is meant to do. It made the argument in a place that can't be argued back. The eyes of witnesses, the short attention span of people who will always choose a single, convenient narrative. People don't like to sit with ambiguity. When presented with two versions of a story and one looks exactly like what they expect you to be, they choose it. In my life, the choice was immediate and merciless. Jess sent a screen recording of that doorbell footage to her mother. Her mother sent it to her contacts. My mother, who should have been a compass in that storm, called me only once not to comfort, but to ask why I had ruined my life by fathering a child at the cost of reconciliation. I called friends. The few who had stayed sent incredulous messages. Why would Annie set me up? They asked. Why would she lie? The simple answer, she wouldn't, became their conclusion. I begged. I messaged everyone I knew, pleading for someone to ask Annie to talk. I wrote hundreds of apologies to Annie. I asked for a conversation. I asked for the truth. I begged her to show the messages she'd claimed I deleted. I asked for one chance to explain the timeline. No, not immediately, but finally. She waited in silence for almost a year, a patient, perfect silence. Then she sent a clip that made it look like something I could not plausibly deny. Then she blocked me. The blocking made her message the final word. There's a particular kind of cold that lives in your stomach when the world decides your fate. It isn't like anxiety. Anxiety is noisy. It paces and prates. This is quiet. It sits like a stone and weighs you down. At night, I would lie next to a baby monitor and listen to the rhythm of a child who has no idea trauma is surrounding their crib. My hands would be knots of rage and regret. I would imagine the doorbell footage looping in everyone's head. I replayed it until the edges of memory turned pixelated and the hug looked like an accusation. When I closed my eyes, I could feel the warmth of Annie's hug and the coolness of everyone's suspicion at once. I tried to think like someone who had been trapped by a frame. How could I prove what wasn't there? How could I resurrect messages that didn't exist? I frantically looked back at my phone. No messages, no log. If Annie had kept them, she wouldn't show them. If she had deleted them, she'd be quiet. I had no proof. I had an hour of my life that looked terrible when cut into a 30-second clip. This is where people expect a counterattack, some tit for tat. But that's not what happened. I had already destroyed something precious through my own actions. No revenge could make that right. Instead, what I did was something less cinematic and more clinical. I focused on process. I started small. I reached out to anyone who might have been near the hospital and asked for names of staff who could corroborate the timeline. I saved timestamps from where I had checked in and out of phone locations. I asked the hospital for visitor logs, only to be told that family privacy laws made that take time. I hired a lawyer to file for access rights to see my child. The lawyer was blunt. Court will take months. Meanwhile, the mother's decision is law at the hospital. The law is not the same as justice. That's a lesson I learned cold. I recorded every attempt to contact Jess. I documented the times I called the ward, who I spoke to, and what they said. It felt mechanical, like trying to measure the depth of a wound with a ruler. It didn't feel satisfying. It felt necessary. People think punishment is loud. The truth is, it's a whisper of absence. Friends drifting, family looking away. Your mother's voice threaded with disappointment. Not a single person I had trusted stood between me and the verdict. Not even my own mother believed my version. That isolation isn't lonely in the way an empty room is lonely. It's lonelier because everything you know chip away one friend at a time. Apologies are public things now. Once a scandal goes social, it moves like bad weather. There's no shelter. I lost work. People I trusted stopped answering. I went from a life with people who would text good mornings to one where answering the phone felt like an act of admission. Court is a peculiar room. It's full of legal language, tiny rituals, and the most ordinary people dressed in suits and tired faces. It's where other people's decisions make your life. The first hearing was a procedural thing, temporary measures, an order for psychological assessments, a timeline. Nothing cathartic happened in that room. No dramatic rescindment, no cinematic unmasking. There were only three things that mattered: the doorbell footage, the recollections of witnesses, and the legal definitions of parental access. Meanwhile, the private parts of life continue. My son grew. I met him once for minutes after he was born. Every hour since, I would imagine what it would be like to hold him again. Some days I believed the law was a slow mercy. Some days I believed I'd never see him again. This story doesn't end with me being vindicated on camera, friends pouring back into my life, or Annie facing public shame. The revenge she enacted, if we call it revenge, worked exactly as she'd planned. It closed a door. It rewrote a narrative that the people around me accepted without asking too many questions. What I got instead was a different kind of payoff, an acceptance of responsibility that scorched me, but also cleared a path. I had spent months asking other people to believe me. I realized I had wasted precious energy that I could have spent on being a better man now. I don't say this to excuse what happened. I say it because when you have nothing left, your only real option is the person staring back at you in the mirror. I began to work on myself the way people cut out rotten wood, methodically, painfully, and with the knowledge that some scars will always show. Annie is not a supervillain in my memory. She's a person who suffered. She watched me break the life she thought we had. She reclaimed control the only way she could, by turning one day into evidence. That decision was cold and calculating. It was vindictive. It also made a perverse kind of sense. If you've been wronged and you watch the person who did it walk toward ease and new life, what looks more satisfying than one moment that undoes everything? The cruelty of it still shocks me, but I understand the logic. It's no consolation. When I speak of the hug, I want you to feel my palms for a second. Sweaty, weak, like someone trying to hold themselves together with their hands. When I remember the doorbell light blinking on the video, I see it like a single punctuation mark inside a sentence that changed my life. My throat tasted of old coffee in court. The fluorescent hospital lights always felt colder after that day. I remember the security guard's jacket scratch against my arm like sandpaper, the kind of abrasion that leaves a mark longer than it should. My mind could be a hum of two voices, one that begged for understanding and another that scolded me for deservedness. Both were loud, both were true. The internal monologue was the longest part of my sentence. Annie, you can get it Saturday. Either that or it's in the bin. That line carried a subtle mercy. It was an ultimatum. Ward manager. We've received a concern. For now, access is restricted. That bureaucratic sentence sounded like a judge. Jess, after footage. I can't do this right now. 4 words like steel. My lawyer. This will take time. Prepare yourself for months. The most practical thing anyone said. Me, in the mirror. If not for me, then for him. The new prayer. I don't have a neat moral to pin on the end of this. Life rarely offers tidy lessons in the wake of selfishness and calculated revenge. But if there's anything I've learned, it's this. Actions leave echoes. Some echoes are merciful, some are ruthless. The only thing you control is what you do after the echo hits. If this story made you think twice about what people are capable of, hit like and leave a comment. Tell me what would you have done in my shoes. And if you want more raw, unfiltered stories about human mistakes and messy consequences that follow, subscribe and ring the bell. I'll be here trying to make better choices.